Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to this special holiday edition of the Wrestling Inc. Daily. It is me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, and I am joined here today for this special holiday review with the person who gave me the gift of WWF Vengeance 2001. This is a precious Christmas gift for me. It's Christy Olson. Christy, welcome to this very special Fun Friday magical edition of the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Oh, wow, Nick, you are so welcome. I appreciate how you've made it sound like I was personally responsible for this pay-per-view. So Thank you for that.
Well, I'm told you wrote it. I'm told that this was all your creative doings, was this show. So.
Yes, I was a creative child genius. And, I'm a big Chris Jericho fan. So it all culminated in December 2001.
Vince has been known to give 12-year-olds the pin from time to time, so I don't doubt it. Anyway, we got a great show to get to here today. Yes, we're going to talk all about WWF Vengeance 2001. And Christy, why don't we just dive on into this thing? You ready to? So first of all, before we get into the review, why did you choose Vengeance 2001? Why was this the show you wanted me to watch?
Well, Nick, I'm kind of like a sucker for a theme, right? And knowing that it was going to be Christmas today, I wanted to choose a December pay-per-view and kind of went deep diving into which one would be the best. This is probably one of the most memorable and, of course, a big moment for Chris Jericho. Jeff Hardy versus Matt Hardy with Lita as a special ref gets me excited as well. And to be honest with you, this wasn't during a time where I was really tuned in. I had watched as a kid and have only been back watching for about 8 years or so. So I've never sat and watched this start to finish. I've seen the moments. I know what goes down. I know what's important about it, but to be able to sit and watch it on the WWE network, which always chaps my ass a little bit to have to pull that up, but whatever, $10 a month, I can handle it.
Why not?
It was really fun to sit and give this one another watch. And I think everybody else will enjoy taking a look back at it as well.
Well, this is a really interesting, it's weird how this worked out, the energy in the room, Christy, because yesterday on the Christmas Eve edition of the Daily, I reviewed WrestleMania 17 with Justin LaBar, which took place about 8 months before this pay-per-view. And just before WrestleMania 17, Vince bought WCW. They bought it like the Monday before WrestleMania 17. You picked this show. So what I'm getting at is WrestleMania 17 is really where the WWF versus WCW war begins. The show that you picked, weirdly, is like where it ends. I have no idea how you two just perfect energies picked the bookends for this 8 month period.
Well, Nick, we think that you need a little bit of help in your knowledge. You don't always know everything that's going on. And we thought we'd bring it full circle for you. I am totally kidding. Of course, everything that's going on all the time.
Thank you, Christy. But I'm just saying, these two shows, they complement each other. This is a really interesting 2-part series. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you about the show, having just watched Mania 17 and seeing what could have been. Everybody was very excited about WCW versus WWF when it started. So here we are. That brings us to December.
Right. Well, and even though WrestleMania 17 isn't fresh on my mind, they did a really good job on Vengeance of kind of reliving that history throughout the year and what went down at SummerSlam as well. And even on TV in the weeks before this, that was, of course, very important and traumatic for one Vince McMahon.
Yes. No, for sure. Sure. I'm just saying that from my end, I'm going to have some stuff I'm going to probably bring up and throw at you that had I not watched WrestleMania 17, I don't know that I would have watched this show the same way. So we're going to have some different perspectives here, is what I'm getting at.
I love it. I hope we butt heads, Nick.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope we just smack each other.
That's what everybody wants on Christmas, a break from their own family fighting and hearing us argue a little bit. So let's get really hot.
I don't know why they ever put their hand up in the headbutt, right? I mean, I guess you don't want to headbutt somebody, but anyway. We're both going to bleed the hard way, I guess. We're going to butt head. All right, December 9th. 2001. That is when Vengeance takes place. It goes from the Pechanga Arena in San Diego, California. Your commentators for the night are Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. And look, Christy, we're going to get into it here tonight. Jim Ross was great. Jim Ross was actually very good, I thought, on the show. Jerry Lawler, man. Him with the women on this show. It's a rough listen to at various points throughout the show that I'm going to have to bring up, Christy.
It is very hard. Some of the things that happened in the ring, of course, didn't help. And I had to remind myself at several points that that's just where we were at this time with women's wrestling, with the way that we talked about women, with the way that women were presented in media, and how big Playboy was then. And we had the man show. I often think like this was the time that kind of shaped I went the way of like Jesse Spano and Topanga Lawrence, and I was like against it all. And I was like a young female crusader. So that's really why I kind of checked out during this time. And it is still to this day, it's hard to watch, even knowing that things evolved in the way that they did, that women have the respect they deserve now. And also that Jerry Lawler deserves our respect as a commentator, but certainly wouldn't have earned it with just this showing, right?
No, I would agree with that. So anyway, yeah, that's awesome. I was more of a what was it? Ben from Boy Meets World. What was the name of the kid? No, it was
Corey.
Corey. He was played by Ben Savage. Corey, yeah, Corey. I was more Corey. So I wasn't running around like Test would later on in the show like an absolute creep. So anyway,
there's always one at every wrestling show.
This one's bad. We're gonna get to that segment a little bit. I'm gonna be very upset. All right. Anyway. Pre-show, we open the show, there's this vignette, and all I wrote here to describe this vignette is Freddie Blassie is shown watching some dystopian nightmare regarding the history of former WWF and WCW champions. Very Clockwork Orangey, I felt like, with Freddie Blassie just sitting there, all these very like dramatic, grainy images of the former champions that had come before, It was weird.
Yeah. I mean, my first reaction was, of course, like, what the F? Like, what is this? What am I watching? But that's essentially was his reaction as well. And it really kind of like hooked me in, right? I went, okay, I haven't seen a pay-per-view start like this in 20 years.
Oh, it was a weird, if you just want to spend like 45 seconds feeling like you're on drugs, but not actually taking drugs, watch the opening vignette for Vengeance 2001. It's a weird one. That brings us into the ring. Where actually at the top of the ramp, Vince McMahon, he struts. He says this past Thursday on SmackDown, he was not close to kissing anyone's ass. He said no man is big enough to make him kiss his ass, which of course we're gonna get a long vignette later. But Vince was made to kiss Rikishi's ass on SmackDown. I'm guessing the go home before the show, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did see it later, the whole thing play out once again on the pay-per-view in the flashback. Yeah. And it made me excited. It made me want to be like, oh, I would have wanted to watch that show and I would want to watch the next week to see what's happening. And it just felt so different from what we see now and so enthralling and just so fun. And who doesn't love to see Vince McMahon get humiliated? Also, this is my kind of main thought as I rewatched what happened with Vince McMahon.
Sure.
I've kind of lost a lot of respect for the company and Vince himself over how talent has been treated this year. And this kind of brought me back to remembering how much I used to kind of revere him and look at him as somebody who like, that's pretty freaking cool. He's not going to make anyone do anything that he wouldn't do himself. To put himself on TV in the middle of the ring with Rikishi's ass in his face, that garnered a lot of my respect back in the day. And this made me realize that I've lost a lot of that.
Yeah, Vince is a complicated character. The advent of the internet, I don't know, did him any favors. I think it was a little bit easier to live in the shadows pre-internet for Vince, but it has all come out. Well, anyway, Vince is in the ring. He talks about Austin beating up Kurt Angle and threatening Vince with doing the same. He said that his 50-50 partner, Ric Flair, told him that anyone who came to his aid would be suspended. So just so everybody, at this point, Ric Flair is what? He's like, owns half the company, right? And him and Vince are like sharing power in the WWE universe at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, he bought it from Stephanie. Rick bought it from Stephanie and Shane from the downfall of the alliance. And he is now a 50-50 owner with Vince McMahon in the WWE. That's good stuff.
Here's the thing that this show was, because we are literally 8 months from when Vince bought WCW on this show. WWE guys are presented well. ECW guys at various points are going to be presented well. The guys from WCW that jumped to WWE before Vince bought WCW, some of them look pretty good. But man, there's nobody on this show except for the very end, which we will get to, that is really like a post WCW talent that's brought to WWE. It is glaring how quickly Vince was done with that whole angle here on this show. That was something that stood out to me.
Yeah, done with the angle, done with the talent, done with the championships, with the belts, the whole thing. And I listened to Bruce Pritchard's podcast episode about this Vengeance show to kind of get some of that behind the scenes scoop. And he really reiterated that that was Vince's mood at that time, was like, over it. It's a dead company. It's a dead championship. Why would we even, give it any more attention? And he felt that the alliance thing, that invasion angle, the whole thing was dead in the water.
Yeah, it didn't
killed it. This was it. This is the funeral, right?
This is him shoveling the dirt on this thing here. So Vince says that The Rock took advantage of him, shoved his face into the ass of Rikishi, which was the most humiliating experience of his life. This is a man who had to go to Congress and was investigated for steroid distribution. That was less embarrassing to him than having to go put his head inside of Rikishi's ass. Which, by the way, I should share. And I think there's like some photos out there. When I was an indie manager, I did at one point take the stink face from Rikishi myself. So I can't.
My God, Nick, how is that not in your Twitter bio?
I don't know. I've done a lot of weird things. Did I include that? Have been stink honorary BSK, have been stink faced. I don't know. Is that
yes, that is clout, sir.
I don't know that he liked me because he pulled the thong down and everything. It was just bare sweaty man butt right up in my face there. So anyway, it's I was like kind of excited about it because I was like, oh wow, this is a legendary spot. And then you're laying there in the corner and you see this man's butt just eclipse the lights, and you're like, what am I doing right now? Where am I? What are the choices I've made that have led me to this moment? So
that's what I was wondering. What was going through Vince's mind in that exact moment? Like, was it stinky? Was it sweaty? Was it wet? Did Rikishi take more care with his derriere that evening to make sure he wasn't stinky? Like, I have to know these things.
I asked Rikishi about this in an interview one time. He told me that he would carry like 3 thongs in his bag. One that was always like brand new, the other one that was like washed, and then one that he didn't wash. And like, depending on if he liked you or not, he would pick what kind of thong he would wear when you got the stink face.
Wow. That is power.
That is insight. That is that is something to wrestle with right there, everybody. Strap that to your nose. All right. Anyway, then Vince chides the people for laughing at him like he's some kind of cartoon or comedy skit. You don't laugh at the misfortune of billionaires, which I feel like is a real genuine thought that Vince carries with him to this day. Like, you can't laugh at people with money. They'll kill you or have you killed, I guess. So, he then tells everyone,
privilege aside.
Yeah, shut up, randomly. And then tells everybody to remember that he who laughs last laughs loudest, which would become like, maybe this pay-per-view should have been called He Who Laughs Last Loudest, because that would have been a better name for this show.
And I'm sure one of those rock bands that they featured on the show probably has a song by that name, so it would have fit perfectly.
Sure.
We heard a little drowning pool. Who else? All the classics, like everything that popped up. Everybody in the room that was watching was like, I had that album. I had that CD.
Puddle of Mud. I don't.
Yes.
Trying to think of others of that ilk at that time. Anyway, where's Jamie Iovine? He was just on the show last Friday. So anyway, Ric Flair comes out. I noted Rick was wearing an ill-fitted suit. Like, he looked small, and he's so known for like dressing. I have no idea why he was dressed like one of the agents from The Matrix here or something. It was a weird look for him.
Yeah, was it like him trying to give it like, this is what Ric Flair would wear if he actually owned a wrestling promotion? Like, what? Was he playing dress up there, and that's what he thinks, like that maybe he thinks Vince dresses poorly, or I don't know, maybe it was a rib.
I don't know. I'm glad that you were also like enthralled with what Rick was wearing, because I was also like, who made this call? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even a V-neck t-shirt. Come on, Rick.
Yeah. Well, Rick comes out and he interrupts Vince. He says, hey, you know what? Enough of your jibber jabber. We're going to start the show right now. He hits the music. It's Too Cool's music, but it's not Scotty and Brian. It's Scotty, Too Hotty, and Albert, who were not called Too Cool, but were in essence Too Cool here, right?
There literally are no other words to describe these guys besides too cool.
Man, Albert looked good here. So did Scotty. And so they come to the ring, and Vince is standing there, and he's like so upset with Rick. He's not even moving. And Scotty and Albert, they figure, you know what? have a dance party around Vince McMahon, and they dance around Vince, and Vince is not having it, and he leaves. I love that. It's great.
Well, yeah, and again, anytime when you're like working with the boss like that, I think there must just be kind of weird, crazy pressure. And thinking now too, I worked with Coach Bloom, I guess I have to call him, and Scotty, who was the only coach who we called by his first name. He was like that cool teacher that lets you call them by their first name. Back down at the PC, in a little bit more serious kind of a situation. So to see them out there like just yucking it up, that toe touch jump that Scotty came out with, at the top of the entrance was like an A+ Olympic style, and it was just really fun to see those two guys like being so gimmicky and not being their normal. Well, be scared of me, Coach Bloom wants everyone to be scared of him. He's not cool.
So I did Waltman's podcast the other day, and he was talking about working with Albert and how he really thought he was just a guy who was just a sponge. You always wanted to learn. He was a great big, I think is what Sean said. And watching him here, because it was only a couple years later that he would leave the company and go to Japan and reinvent himself as, Giant Bernard, and then come back to the States, do a little run in WWE before transitioning to this very influential, coach down at NXT and for WWE. And watching him here committing to what he's being given, right? I mean, because the whole match here, we'll talk a little bit about the match, but the whole match here, he never stops dancing. Like, and you never, I mean, I guess he was a dancer when he was Brodus Clay, I guess. So it's not like I've never seen him dance, but for a big guy who was just supposed to be a tough guy, he was trying. He wasn't scared to try things, I guess is what I took away from this bout,
Yeah, he seemed fully committed to it. I mean, I was sold. I thought he was having fun out there. So he convinced me that he used to be a cool guy.
He's a cool guy. What do you mean used to be a cool guy? I've never heard anybody speak a bad word about Matt Blue.
I don't know. I don't know if cool's the word I would use for him anymore.
All right. Anyway, the men are all so out comes Test and European champion Christian. They're the opponents for Scotty and Albert here tonight. Now, one thing I noted here, by the way, they just started brawling outside before they got in the ring. But I noted here, because we just did the documenting China thing, and I just heard all about China's tale. I couldn't help but look at the timeline here, because my whole life the past couple months has been looking at China's timeline. So WrestleMania 17, that was her last Mania match. Just a couple weeks before this pay-per-view is when she left the company, when there was the infamous meeting with her and Vince and Stephanie. And so at this point, China's gone, Steph's with Hunter, and here's Test, who's now, I'm guessing, single, maybe with somebody else, but the ex of Stephanie, and now it's out the steps with Hunter. What a messed up, what a love quadrangle square going on in the situation right now.
And to add to that, I believe that Test was with Stacy Keibler at this point. They were together from 01 to 05, and this is late 01.
Okay.
So,
okay. Oh, wow.
A little more hot tea for you, Nick. Okay. I love that part of it.
We'll get to how both of them are. You know what? That kind of makes sense because they're both booked very interesting on the show. So here's some highlights from the bout. Albert, I said, kept trying to get in. Test and Christian started to go on Scotty in the corner. A few minutes in, Scotty landed a super kick to Test. The crowd popped. Scotty tagged in Albert after a while. Hot tag. Albert hit Scotty's hip hop punches again. Albert's he's dancing. He's having fun. He's dancing. He at one point picked up Christian. He hit a beautiful helicopter spin like Cesaro does. It just, because he's so big and strong, he really lifted him up with it, Thought that was good. Scotty went for a bulldog on Christian. Christian laid him out instead, and Christian attempted the worm, but Albert cut him off. Scotty shoved Christian out of the ring. He bulldogged Test. He hit the worm. The crowd was way into the worm. They love the worm here, Christy.
Yeah, the worm kind of won the night after it was all said and done, didn't it?
Yeah, the worm was very big, and then we have Albert coming in. He hit Christian with the Baldo bomb, which looked great. It was a pretty standard tag match is all I wrote, especially, I mean, even by today's standards, this was you would see a match, I feel like this, on a SmackDown. I don't know about a pay-per-view, but Albert, I just wrote, was very good at this point. He was really moving, and again, it looked like he was willing to try things out here, which I was very impressed by.
Yeah, your quintessential opener match, right? This did exactly what it was intended to do.
Yeah, I mean, I thought so, but it got there eventually, but I was a little nervous early on in this bout because the crowd really didn't seem hugely into it. And your first match, you really usually want to grab the crowd and get them really excited. Once they got to the worm stuff, they seemed to be there. Yeah, I don't want to say it was like the best opener I've ever seen, but I suppose it did the job, you know?
Like they were confused because it was Scotty and Albert, but then once they saw the worm and the things that they're used to seeing, then they kind of got on board a little bit more.
Yeah, and you got this kind of, I don't know how much Test and Christian were working together at this point. You know, it was just a lot of different players here. So I thought it was an okay opener. The crowd seemed into the worm. All right. Then we go backstage. Coachman is with William Regal. Regal gets upset that his methods are being called questionable. He says Edge is great, but he's been fighting since he was 15. He's one of the toughest men in the world. And Regal says he's going to take Edge's IC title. And then he called Coach a silly pillock, which I thought I wrote down and heard wrong until the announcers repeated it, questioning and saying, "What's a pillock?" I also don't know what a silly pillock is, but it's what an insult from Regal here.
And you know what? We assume that it's some British word we've never heard. Maybe it's something that he made up specifically for this pay-per-view, just because he was so disgusted that there was just no other word besides pillock. Was that it?
Maybe.
Pillock? Maybe we should bring it back, Nick.
Silly pillocks. I mean, it sounds like a shirt. It was a weird thing. That brought us to our second match. Intercontinental Champion Edge versus Regal. Man, Edge is like young and great shape. He looked fantastic here, Christy.
Yeah, a little cheese ball, but fantastic nonetheless. You know, just so 2001. I have fun with the fashion part of it. And I mean, just the log of the shiny coat and the blue and the black. And it was just so this era.
Well, you could tell that, like, because Christian was in the opener with Test there. And now Edge is in this singles match here with Regal. He's the Intercontinental Champion. I mean, granted, Christian's the European champion, but it did seem like Edge was starting to take shape and form here with the kind of Edge we would see in the kind of coming years that really would be the breakout star. I started to see glimpses of it here that I didn't necessarily even just see 8 months ago at WrestleMania 17 when he was more of an established tag guy, if that makes sense.
Right. And it was almost like he was a little bit putting it on, like he himself didn't quite believe him as a huge single star yet, but he was going to go out there and act like he was. And that was just kind of the feeling that I got from the whole vibe when he came out.
Yeah, and working with a guy like Regal here and an IC title match, great way to build up some credibility. And JR noted that Regal, by the way, before we got going, he was the first member of the Kiss My Ass Club, if you hadn't forgot. Vince's butt is a big part of this show. The ref checked Regal before the match to make sure he didn't have brass knuckles, which I thought was great, and it'll come to play here in a little bit. But why don't we see that more now, Christy? Why isn't there like somebody checking? I don't see the refs doing this as much, looking for weapons and stuff before the matches.
Because essentially the whole brass knuckles thing has been killed, right? Like it got done too much. It started getting done too obviously. And I think it got killed basically. Like, would we believe it now? It would have to be done in this very nuanced way that it was in this match. With, the cameras just kind of catching it, not the crowd or the ref catching that he grabbed it. And I think they just stopped being that careful with it and kind of killed it.
Yeah, it's just, I think about a guy like Sami Zayn, who's got that gimmick right now. He's got all these pockets, right? And obviously they did that ladder match where he had all the handcuffs hitting all over. It's like, I would just love to see a ref go to pat down Sami Zayn. And it's like, wait, what's this? And he finds 5 different things in all of Sami Zayn's pockets because he's just such a notorious cheater. I don't know. That's all I was thinking about. Why do we see this anymore? So
I like it.
These two get into it quick. And within a minute, Edge is hitting a second rope drop kick. I thought that looked really good. Jim Ross, I said, does a great job. And he does this, and he's just done it his whole career. He did a great job selling William Regal. I thought that he did a really good job playing into the differences between these two men. You got Regal, he's the street tough who's, trained in the bad parts of the UK. You got Edge, this kind of more surfer guy who's the more hardcore guy. I just wanted to put over Jim Ross here for, I thought, telling a really good story in a match that I don't think had a lot of build or a lot going into it,
Right. It would have been obvious to anyone watching that these two styles are very different. And so I think what Jim did, instead of pointing that out in a glaring way that made it not work, he kind of highlighted that in a way that told the story how different they are really behind the scenes as men themselves.
Yeah, 100%. He made it about the people, not necessarily the action here. I thought he did I just thought he did a really strong job of that. And Regal was largely on offense for most of the beginning of the match here until Edge hit this reverse face buster. He sent Regal reeling. Regal then was sitting on top. Edge pulled out a top rope Hurricane Rana that just looked awesome too. He also, he was just moving here. Great Northern Light suplex. He went for the spear outside, but Regal sidestepped, sending Edge into the steel. And while the ref was checking on Edge, that's when we got the spot where Regal walks the other side of the ring, and he must have come out during the day, and he shoved his brass knuckles. And I wrote I thought it was like inside the ropes you used to tie down the padding on the ring, a very unusual place to put a weapon. That seemed, dare I say, believable that this man could have come out earlier in the day, putting this there, knowing this is the last place anybody would look for these brass knuckles, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's not just obviously thrown under the ring in a place where he can see it and grab it easily. Yeah. We got a believability factor with this one. That's what I'm saying. We've lost a lot of that nuanced stuff with these little weapons or something being hidden around the ring. Like, this is the way it should be done.
Yeah, I was very impressed with this spot. Then Regal, without using the brass knucks, he rolled Edge into the ring, went for a 2 count. So he has them or knows where they are, because I didn't know if they were in his trunks or not, but he's not using them yet. Just really subtle. Regal then he hit 2 double underhook power bombs in a row for a great near fall. And then while the ref was tending to Edge after these power bombs, that's when Regal went to put the knucks on. And as he turns around, before he can even hit Edge, Edge hits the spear out of nowhere for the win. All I wrote was, this is better than I expected. It was largely Regal on offense until the end, but it worked. This was a very good match. I enjoyed the hell out of this.
Yeah. And made Edge look so strong, right? Like, we're talking about, this is kind of this coming out as a single star on the IC champion. This made him look strong. It made me believe him as a champion.
Yeah, I thought it was just very well done. That took us backstage then. Flair's in his office when Kurt Angle comes in. This was one of 2 segments that I'm already a bit of Ric Flair fan, but he just sold this so well. So Angle comes in to Rick, and Rick's on the phone. He puts the phone down, and Angle's like hot. And Rick's like kind of confused. And Angle's telling Ric Flair that he's the 14-time world champion, which is weird to think that even at this point, Rick had 2 more to go. Angle told Rick, "You're never going to win a gold medal." And Rick's like, "Yeah, you're a hero." Like, he's not insulted by anything Kurt's saying. Angle tells Rick he's going to become the undisputed world champion. And Rick's like, "Yeah, great. Good. Go
do it.
Champion. You're the champ." And Angle's like really intense. And Rick's like, "I agree with you." And then Angle leaves. And it's just fantastic how Rick is just so baffled by Kurt Angle. He's like, "Why are you upset? I think you're great. I think you're going to do this, buddy." Funny.
It was so good. I did sit and laugh out loud during it. I was giving Kurt a lot of the credit as I watched it, kind of thinking that, we just don't see, he doesn't get an opportunity to entertain us in that way anymore. And I kind of forgot that he could. And so he was the one who stood out to me. I feel like you're kind of giving Rick a lot of the credit. And so now I'm looking back at it like, oh, was Kurt really that good? Was Rick carrying him through? I might have to watch this one back.
It takes 2 to tango. Rick was the straight man here. I'll put it for sure. But I think they played well off of each other. I guess the reason I thought I really enjoyed Rick here is because Kurt was very much kind of this character already at this point. And, Rick is just so over the top. For him to allow Kurt to hold the energy of that and more or less just play down, and I thought it was Kurt was very much Kurt. I enjoyed the way Rick played with his energy and status, which is a very nerdy thing for me to say, within that particular segment. I thought that Rick really amplified it by playing down a little bit to Kurt.
Yeah, and to your point, it probably is more difficult for Ric Flair to bring it down than it is for Kurt Angle to bring it up.
Yeah. So Kurt was Kurt. Rick was kind of just more of a, spectator to what was happening in that moment. We go then to another backstage segment. Lita is shown working out. She's stretching in the locker room. She's going to be the guest referee for Matt and Jeff here in just a moment. She's wearing a shortcut Team Extreme referee shirt with a matching referee thong, which was just, I thought, a nice touch. The details.
I noticed that immediately as well, Nick. It's okay. I mean, it was just the fashion of the time. That trend, I don't know if you've noticed, is actually coming back now with a vengeance, pretty quickly.
And Christy, why do I read what I read? I was reading Gillian Anderson was credited for this trend originally. She walked the red carpet at an Oscar party in the 90s or something. It was the first to make this a popular trend. And now of all the people I would have thought to have made this the fashionable thing, I did not peg Gillian Anderson as the person to do that.
No, but now that you say it, yeah, that's kind of the iconic. There are so many. Little Kim, Halle Berry did it on a red carpet as well, that I'm sure many of our listeners will recall. So, but of course, in the wrestling world, we think Lita when we see an exposed thong. And this one, I do have to mention too, the sides were very, very thick.
Yes.
And it almost had me wondering if that was just an attachment to the pants that was coming up and out, and was she wearing regular, because I just went down the rabbit hole of is she wearing another smaller thong underneath? Is she wearing regular underwear underneath? What's happening there? I got questions. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man, I gotta get a WWE costume person in here. That's a good question. Well, anyway, Matt tells Lita he knows it's gonna be a hard time for everyone. He says tonight he's gonna show that he's the brains of the Hardy Boys, and he can make good decisions. Lita says that as his girlfriend, she's always on his side, but tonight she's the ref. She's going to call it down the middle. Matt says he's going to win, and he leaves. Now, this takes us to this pre-match video, kind of recapping what brought us to this moment. Talks about the Hardys like they're brothers when they signed with WWE. Matt's putting over Jeff as this risk taker. Matt's saying their TLC matches made them superstars, and then dissension starts to come in when Jeff loses this big cell match and by taking some big risk. And Matt cost Jeff then a match the next night or the next week because he's upset with Jeff. And now these two they hate each other. And Lita's caught in the middle. And Matt tells Lita at one point in the vignette to shut up when she interjects. And later he and Jeff, she tries to interject and break them apart. They both push her to the ground for trying to speak reason. What jerks the Hardy Boys are here at this point in time. I'm not really sympathizing with either man, to be quite frank. And then, lastly in this vignette, Matt makes Lita the ref so she can show which side she is on. Any thoughts here on the build to this bout?
Well, just, kind of what we were talking about with Jerry Lawler and commentary at first as well. We just have come so far in wrestling in the last 2 decades where it just is jarring when you see Matt and Jeff push Lita to the ground. It takes a sec till you have to remind yourself okay, yes, this is what they did then. And also it's Lita who's a tough badass and, if she wanted to could defend herself, but that's totally beside the point. So that just made me a little bit uncomfortable. But besides that, this buildup, again, this is a good story. This is something that we could imagine really happen backstage at a show where Matt goes, dude, you're taking too many risks. This is too much. We don't need to do all this. I bought into it, even not having sat and just watched the buildup happen on TV over week by week, but just from it being recapped here, I was into it. And Lita with a special ref, there's so much that the three of them did with storytelling over their time together. And I think this is kind of a highlight, even though it wasn't notoriously well received. And from my research, Vince McMahon wasn't really into pitting these two against each other. He didn't think anyone would really care. And I guess the crowd reaction from this maybe supported that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm with you. I thought this was actually, it wasn't rocket science. It's pretty straightforward. Two brothers that don't like each other. One of them's girlfriend is caught in the middle. And, Lita getting pushed to the ground. I'd put that maybe number 3 or 4 of most uncomfortable things that happen with women on this show. We've got a couple to go that I think are definitely going to top this one. The Ted stuff. Oh, my God. But anyway, let's go to the action here. So Lita's brought out as a special ref. Lawler noted. I wrote JR here, but I meant Lawler. Lawler noted he's all about Lita's thong. Can't get enough of it. He notes he's drooling over it. Well, gross old man Lawler. This is the first of many comments he'll make. Some of them I write out completely. Jeff comes out wearing, I don't recall this look. It's a baseball cap with the back part cut out and the dreads coming out of the back. You like
yes, it was super weird. Well, I was so confused by why is he wearing a hat? Is he going to take the hat off? Oh, wait, he's wrestling. He's starting the match in the hat. It was weird. It made me wonder what was going on with his hair, what was going on underneath there that he felt he had to cover up. It was suspicious, Nick. And also I have, cut the back out of many a hat so that I could rock a high pony. So I get it, but it still was weird.
Okay. I thought it was a unique look. Yeah. But Matt came out next. The other thing about this is, so Jeff comes out to the Hardy Boys entrance music, and then without even stopping the music, the announcer just brings out Matt. It was a little weird. That was a little awkward.
Yeah, they could have at least stopped it and started it again or something. I was wondering. That was another thing I was distracted by during the entrance. I was like, but wait, is he going to come out now to the statement?
It's like a
roll. Didn't seem incredibly thought out.
It was a rolling entrance. You don't see those very often. So anyway, Jeff starts the match with the hat on, which I also thought was weird. Because like, how are you gonna take a face bump with the brim of a hat? I really was like, that seems like it would hurt. Anyway, so Matt gets into quick offense, literally walks on Jeff's back. The hat comes off pretty quick. So no more hat. The hat is gone.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, no kidding. So Matt's in control to start. The crowd is pretty quiet with some whistling at Lita. But yeah, these two start off with this kind of mat-based stuff. He goes from some near falls. Lita's going for pins. Matt hits a second rope leg drop. Jeff moves. Matt hits a chin breaker. But the crowd's not really kind of into this for the first 5 minutes. It's pretty quiet. Is that what you're saying by saying, Vince may be onto something, that people were not as into this as it would play back in history? Because historically, I thought this was actually not a bad match.
No, not a bad match, but yeah, people aren't reacting. And even myself, I was wondering, okay, who am I supposed to be cheering for right now? And who would I be rooting for if I was 10 years old and if I had seen this all play out? And I understood maybe the audience's reaction.
Well, the mood kind of changed for me when out of nowhere, Jeff went to hit this whisper in the wind on Matt, and Matt just comes up from behind Jeff and just shoves him off the top rope to the outside. And that's where I thought things really kind of picked up for this match. Oh no, I'm sorry. He didn't fall out. He didn't fall out of the ring. He fell down into the Tree of Woe spot, and Lita had to pull him, right? Yeah, pulled Jeff out of the Tree of Woe, and Matt was upset, and Jim Ross was like, no, this is the right thing for Lita to be doing. Good ref. He's trapped, whatever, right? But it was a little moment there, and it seemed vicious. And it showed, and it was the first time Lita had kind of gotten involved in what was going to be going on between the brothers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where it started to feel thought out.
Yes, and so then here's where it gets interesting. So Jeff is standing on the apron. Matt goes to sunset power bomb Jeff to the outside. Jeff turns it into a Hurricane Rana, and I just wrote that looked really cool. I'm surprised we haven't seen this spot done back recently.
That was exactly what I was like, whoa, how are people not doing that all the time? Like, that was cool.
Yeah, I was very into that. Jeff flipped back into the ring. Looks like, and so here's the thing. Jeff did this entrance back into the ring where he did like a front flip, and then he lands and he hurts his knee. And this is where I was like, this is good storytelling, because Jeff just did something he didn't have to do. He did this very flamboyant entrance to the ring, and now his knee hurts. And this is where Matt starts to go in on the knee, and that's really the crux of where this whole feud began, which is Matt being upset that Jeff is making these foolish decisions. He's getting himself hurt. He's costing him matches, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is when it became obvious what's going on here, and now I think we can come for it a little bit more.
So Jeff briefly gets an offense where Matt keeps going after this knee. Jeff managed to push Matt out of the ring. Now he's on his feet. He's wobbly. He hits this baseball slide on Matt. Jeff goes for a crossbody on the outside, but his leg gives out, really selling this leg. Jeff stays in control. He hits that double leg drop, crotch shot that he does, that he heads slow to the top rope. Matt cuts him off. Matt went for a twist of fate. Jeff countered into his own. Matt went for a backslide. It was a kind of slow count here from Lita. Matt went for another pin. This time he went to hold the ropes. Lita called it off, and Matt is getting very frustrated now. So Jeff, in all this frustration, he goes for a near fall. Matt kicks out, goes after Jeff, kicks him outside. Matt and Lita, now they're just straight up arguing in the ring. Jeff goes up top. Matt cuts him off again, goes for a twist of fate off the top, but Jeff throws him off, hits the swanton. Lita counts the pin, 1, 2, 3, but at the 2 count, Matt does get his foot on the rope. Jeff would pull it off so Lita couldn't see it, and Jeff wins, and Matt is pissed. He left. I thought this was very well done. Of all the Hardy versus Hardy bouts I've seen, this might be my favorite, honestly.
Was it that ending that did it for you? Was it the finish? Because, genius.
I thought the finish was really, I thought it was smart. It was a smart way to keep things going. It's like, how do you get out of it? Jeff was smart enough to just keep it right out of Lita's view. I thought the emotion was there. I thought Lita played well. I thought it was a good match. It makes, I don't know. We're talking 20 years ago, but I thought that this flowed really well.
Well, and as simple as, the foot on the rope, grab the foot off the rope for the 3 count, as simple as that is, it doesn't feel like something that we've seen a lot. It seems like something that would be done, but it's just not. And it made me go, wait, what? It sucked me in. And again, like you say, like keeping it going, keeping the heat going. And oh gosh, now what's going to happen with Lita? And it just, it was what this needed. It's unfortunate that it didn't get to keep going after this, because that was a great kind of kickoff to more.
I thought it, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Matt's personality at this point was not developed. I know that Jeff was just the, white meat, beloved, I wouldn't say all American. I mean, I guess at the time, all American. I mean, there was a lot of guys like Jeff at that time, but he didn't need to do a whole lot. Matt was the one I think that they were really struggling to kind of figure out, okay, you maybe work with Jeff, but what do we do with you outside of that? We don't really know at this point. Well, then we go back.
And wasn't it just weird too to watch an entire match and Matt Hardy did not break into a deletion chant at any point?
Yeah. Well,
it just has been so long now that he's been working that gimmick that I just kept waiting for it. I'm like, oh yeah, it's 2001. It's okay. He's not there yet. We got to give him time.
He was not yet broken,
Right.
He was held together by glue. How he got that glue into his body? I don't know. The Hardys were kids at that time. All right, backstage segment. Women's champion Trish Stratus, she comes into the Rock's dressing room. So at this point in time, are Trish and Rock an item? Is that why they're doing things together on screen or no?
I mean, I was under the impression that they were always trying so hard to keep that under wraps. So I would assume that people didn't know, at least for a while at first, when they were an item.
Okay, well,
so who knows?
This segment seemed to be a wink and a nod to the relationship, in my opinion, because Trish comes into the Rock's dressing room to tell him she loved when he shoved Vince's face into Rikishi's butt, and Trish kisses him on the cheek. Rock tells Trish not to leave so he can tell her that his only focus is leaving tonight as the undisputed champion, but after they both win their title matches tonight, there's going to be plenty of time for her to smell what the Rock is cooking. And you would have thought that, this guy was pro wrestling's James Bond. The crowd was audibly ooh, or oh, like they were making Married with Children sounds here, reacting to the way Rock wooed this woman Trish Stratus with his sexuality and words.
See, and it's so good. It's so The Rock. It puts her over for her upcoming match. That's why I think this was just something that made sense to do in the pay-per-view, not necessarily that they felt like they wanted to, this is really going on in real life, everybody. Are you going to catch on to that? Well, I think it just worked well. It was good.
That's why I asked. I don't know. There was definitely some chemistry here between these two. So anyway, this brings us to the fourth match. What a slam banger to write home about here. The WWF Tag Team Champions Dudley Boyz with Stacy Keibler. They take on the Big Show and Kane. Jim Ross is, I should say, Jerry Lawler's. I don't know why I keep writing Jim. Jerry Lawler's eyes looked gigantic when they panned over to him, looking at Stacy Keibler. He was just drooling over her and her legs. So Big Show, he looks like now at WrestleMania 17, I just watched back, he looked just big. Here, I could start to see some definition. He's starting to look in a little bit better shape, I think, at this point. I don't know what it was, but I think he was starting to turn it around size-wise here.
Yeah, maybe Mania was a bit of a wake-up call because, he moves so well in this match. He really looked like in peak condition here.
Yeah, and him and Kane are so big, and Bubba was in the ring with him first. And Bubba, I've spent some time around Bubba, a bully, whatever you want to call him. He's a huge man. For him to look this tiny next to Show and Kane, I think it's just really just something to take in. Big Show and Kane are dominating. They're throwing themselves at each other, the Dudleys. The Dudleys are getting thrown around, and then the Dudleys are outside. Kane went up for a double clothesline on the outside. Looked great. Stacy got up on the ring, and then Big Show pulls her, Stacy gets into the ring as everybody's down. She's yelling at him. Big Show goes behind Stacy, pulls her pants down, or her skirt down, and then bends her over and spanks her once for the biggest reaction of the night. Oh my God, Christy. This caught me. I was just like, wow. I don't know. 15 years. Imagine. It's amazing what a decade and a half can do between one time and another. You would never see this today. Never.
No, and it's really no wonder why Stacy doesn't highlight this time in her career a whole lot. She's not out there reliving this and working Comic-Cons and trying to get fans. She's not trying to sign 8x10s of a still shot from this pay-per-view. You know what I'm saying? And it's easy to see why. Again, as a woman, I have a lot of questions. Is what was underneath, there's such a thing called butt glue. Pageant girls use it. Did she use butt glue to glue the lacy underwear to herself so that wouldn't come down when he pulled her skirt down? you have to be wearing something else underneath that. I mean, just the terror, I would think, of knowing that you're going to go out on national television live, well, on national pay-per-view, live, international pay-per-view live, and have this done to you. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. She's a model and she's hot, and maybe this was just another night for her. But it's hard to watch. Again, hard to watch.
It's creepy, gross culture, like creepy, gross, old school, boys club culture. It's just like this and all the Lawler comments. Like, I don't know, this feels gross. Feel weird for the adults. Like, as a kid, I get it. Like, you don't get what's going on, but like for all the guys and stuff that were like grown men that were like so into this and stuff, like there were men in the 90s that did not enjoy this kind of entertainment,
Right. But what Lawler is doing is making it okay, right? Making it okay to say those kinds of things, to think those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, both Stacy and all these other women really have accomplished a lot aside from being, the hot girl in the ring. And this just, the Lawler made it okay. He made it okay for it to be skeezy, because I'm sure that was the note that was coming down on top of him. And we do have to remember, like, this, everything was really like this back then. It really was.
Yeah, not everything. I think it's a broad brush, but it does start at the top, right? And the culture that Vince was creating was right up front here with things like this. So anyway, Dudley's then get in the ring. They managed to take down Kane, some double team offense. They hit the Wazap, very popular in 2001, the Wazap. Dudley's had momentum. They knocked Show from the apron. Kane fired back, took down the Dudleys. He tagged in Show. And Show came in here, like you said, moving well, House of Fire, knocking the Dudleys around, including a big backdrop on Devon. Man, of all the people I would never, ever want to take a back body drop from, it's the Big Show. God, that's a 10-foot drop. Holy hell.
Yeah, and it looked gnarly.
Yeah, it looked painful. So JR, again, I think that this was Lawler, but told Stacy that his lap was the best seat in the house. Kane goes on to help Show get up. There's some miscommunication and arguing. Dudley's attacked. They're laid out quickly. Show goes for Bubba. But Bubba takes out Kane. But then he accidentally bumps into Kane. Show grabs Stacy on the outside. Bubba takes the turnbuckle off. Show turns around. The Dudleys pick him up. They do what Jim Ross calls a 3D, which I guess is okay. More of a double face plant into the exposed turnbuckle. And then Jim just said it was not a pretty match. Yeah, this was just... It was the Stacy spot, right? And everything else just kind of seemed like window dressing around it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess when we think about it that way, she got the biggest spot of the night. I'm sorry. I'm just really trying to like justify this in my head and trying to figure out, trying to make it into something that's not horrible. I don't know. I mean, I guess she got the biggest spot of the night, and this is, something that women deal with on a regular basis in the entertainment industry. How are you gonna sell your soul to be in the main spot? Maybe someone like her didn't feel that was selling her soul. I don't know. It just, it's a daily dilemma for those of us who need to make more money and work in the entertainment business.
It's interesting because like there's the Bruce Pritchard version of these stories that I know everybody loves from Conrad. I'd love to hear a woman perspective, like a Trish Stratus, right? Or even like a Stacy Keibler, like her memories, like from a female perspective, what this period was like, because we don't really get that. It's all dudes talking wrestling anymore. And you.
Right. True. And I look at what's happening nowadays, and it's a lot of the same kind of entertainment, it's on social media, or it's on, YouTube or whatever it is. Same kind of stuff. It's not that this isn't around anymore, but it's women are more in control now. And they are directly making money. They are their own boss. When they're an Instagram model, they want to get bent over and get smacked on the ass on Instagram. They're making direct money off that. They're gaining followers that's gonna help them get jobs. Like, it's just so much. There's more empowering aspect to it now than there was back then.
Yeah, for sure. Well, then we throw to a vignette. One of the classic vignettes where WWE tells fans to don't try this at home. And I believe at this time they were getting a lot of heat because kids were like breaking each other's necks and things like that doing pile drivers. So anyway, then we go to Backstage Vignette where Lita is trying to get into Matt's dressing room. She's apologizing for not seeing his foot on the ropes, but Matt is not having it. He storms off. Ugh, the drama.
Oh, no. Lovers scorned. Is it love lost? Will their relationship survive?
No.
Can it get any more dramatic? Oh, it can.
It can. You haven't got the Edge involved in this love triangle.
Yeah.
So this brings us to match number 5, Undertaker versus Hardcore Champion Rob Van Dam. This was a really interesting pre-show video or pre-match video because it recapped the period of time in which Undertaker was turning heel. He cut a promo about all of Vince McMahon's ass kissers, and then he had like a moment of self-realization where he's like, and you know what? I've been the one kissing your ass the most of anybody. Me, Undertaker, Mark Calloway. And then he looks at Jim Ross. He's like, are you too good to kiss Vince's ass? And this is the infamous spot where Taker like makes Jim Ross kiss Vince McMahon's ass. And then Rob Van Dam at some point, I guess, gets involved in this. I don't really know how he gets involved in this, but it is shown like Undertaker starts beating up RVD at several points. He's telling him at Vengeance he's going to respect him. Taker at one point on SmackDown did the RVD thumbs pose, which I was like, what is happening right now? And then it looked like on the last SmackDown, Rob Van Dam attacked Taker with a chair, which to me was a little signal. Maybe Taker was taking the title here tonight, but I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see where it goes here. But anyway, thoughts on the build of this match? Anything?
Not really, because again, we didn't get a whole lot of like flashback, or we weren't told a lot. We weren't freshened up a bit. So I'm sure if we were watching TV twice a week leading up to this, we would have made maybe more to the build. But do you really need that much build when you got RVD versus Taker? And they're both so over in this. And this was it was a great match. It was kind of my favorite. I think it was my favorite probably on the card. And showed some different side like of this title, and the whole hardcore thing didn't need to be blood and guts and weapons in the ring. Like they just really, it was just those two guys like putting on a hardcore freaking match.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, you're right. Taker came out, first of all, to Rollin', riding on his motorcycle, getting cheered wildly, which I thought was weird. Like the fans were way into Undertaker, but they had just watched Undertaker like belittle Jim Ross. Like
Yes.
Is this just a failed heel
Okay.
turn of the Undertaker?
I have a theory here, Nick. I think that WWE has greatly underestimated the power of having those popular songs that people recognize, that people kind of know like what the song is about. So that's telling us something about Taker right now, because we know about this song, we know about Limp Bizkit, and we know Rollin', and we've watched the video. I think that had a bigger effect on the match and the whole feel of everything than we would probably give credit for. And especially now, WWE has their thing where they want to have all the publishing rights, and they want all the music to be theirs that they made. And I think if we got something like, an Undertaker coming out to a current popular song right now, and you're flipping through the channels, that might be exactly what a Raw or a SmackDown needs right now. So I don't think we can underestimate really how much that kind of set the tone,
Yeah, that's a really good point. AEW's been playing around more with like licensing music for their vignettes and stuff, and people really seem to take that. I mean, Sasha's got Snoop Dogg singing her theme song now, which I think we're rapping her theme song, which I think is pretty cool. But you're right.
And look at the big rub that Bayley got from that whole Haley Williams thing.
Right.
Where Haley gave her like live on some fan Q&A thing, like gave Bayley the permission to use her song. And then you're getting all the Haley Williams fans, to love Bayley because she loves Haley. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, anyway, then Rob Van Dam comes out. JR notes that this is going to be for the title, and it will be competed under hardcore rules. Van Dam, surprisingly, he took it to Taker early. I had forgotten like how invested Vince really seemed to be in Rob Van Dam. I guess I overlooked that sometimes, but he really, they let Rob go in here, look good, a lot of kicks at this top rope spinning senton that looked awesome. RVD finally gets caught on the ropes. Taker big boots him to the outside. The crowd's now chanting for RVD. He counters. He pushes Taker to the steel ring post. He clotheslines Taker over the barricade. Now they're brawling in the crowd. One fan has the Mexican flag, and Undertaker's like,
saw that.
Give me that. Grabs a Mexican flag and just starts choking Rob with it. Well, they're in Southern California here,
Right.
So anyway.
Right. Yeah. They're very near San Jose. And I guess that was to be expected.
But again, that's like a babyface thing he did. Kind of like played to the crowd a little bit.
And really, was Vince and WWE putting as much faith behind RVD at this time as they really could have? I mean, he was more over than anyone, but he wasn't really being booked as the most over star.
No, but he was being booked better than, again, anybody from WCW that did not come over before the buyout.
That's
So,
true.
and again, like this show is filled with WWE guys getting the rub, and a handful of guys that are not WWE guys getting to look even decent. I put Rob in that category here, where he was at least somebody that Vince didn't build from the ground up, that Vince was giving a chance to, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, that's true.
so Rob gets up, he does a springboard moonsault on Taker onto the concrete. Rob then gets thrown through some steel barricades, which landed on his face, and then Undertaker just walks over and just like stomps him into his face. And Lawler, with actually a pretty decent call, said it looked like a waffle iron, which I thought was accurate. At least it was very accurate. Rob then attacked Taker with a fire extinguisher, trash can. He climbed up on this ledge above an exit. He hit a flying crossbody. Very cool visual. This always looks good. Big holy shit chant, Yeah.
Yeah, what really kind of stood out to me in this match, and what I think is different, especially from now, was the selling. Both of these guys took the time to sell and didn't forget 5 seconds later that they had just been hit with something hardcore. Really that kind of storytelling aspect of like, yeah, that thing that just happened to me, it hurt. And I'm going to act as such for at least the next 5 to 10, maybe even 15 to 20 seconds. And it really worked. And it seemed very old school. Right. Did you notice that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, the thing about this stuff is these two guys were just working they were working good, which is something I'll get to here at the end. Now Undertaker is around into the he's kicking RVD is now kicking Undertaker around. He takes him into the back. They began climbing the steps up onto the Titantron stage, where RVD's hitting Taker with the trash can. And this was a really good visual too here, right? Like they weren't backstage long enough for the fans to have to watch the screen. They're already back on the stage, and it's a really dramatic looking stage here, I thought.
Yes, because sometimes their production is too fancy looking, it's too polished. And in here, we actually had a moment where it seemed like they, off the cuff, went to somewhere that was dark and were fighting through backstage. And it was, again, believable.
Yeah, all steal everything on the stage. Taker regroups. He starts to lay out RVD. He picks him up, and he does the Rey Mysterio NWO lawn dart spot. Throws RVD right into that steel frame around the projector screen. It just, I don't know. I don't think it really did. I don't think Rob got hurt at all, but it sounded brutal, right? Which was great. Nice little match.
It did. You just hold your breath for a second, like, are they going to break something? Because again, that would be very real.
It felt real. Taker went for the last ride on the stage, and as he gets Rob up, Rob like grabs this scaffolding on the side and just climbs away. Just great use of the space. I feel like such a theater nerd as we're reviewing this show. Then Taker laid him out. He goes to the back for a chair, and Rob kicked Taker before he could use the chair. He laid him out with Rolling Thunder on the stage. He grabbed the chair. He did a running Van Daminator on the sitting Taker. I just wrote, this match rules. It was really picking up the pace here. And I was thinking to myself, everybody says chairs match. What are you going to do with the chairs match? Man, if Rob Van Dam came out with a steel chair and was like, I could do a lot with a steel chair. This Sunday, I'm going to beat you in a chairs match. I would be in. Like, for real. I think he's the only guy that could sell me on a chair. When I think chairs now, I associate them with Rob Van Dam after watching stuff like this. That's all I think. Anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah, and again, it seemed important and it seemed like a real weapon. And what Taker kind of did with it at the very end, I mean, man, this was good. I agree with you. This match rules.
So he throws Taker the chair, goes to the Van Daminator. Taker ducks. He lays out RVD. I'm pretty sure Taker just told the crowd, did Taker do a suck it here before he went back to attacking RVD? I kind of was like watching back and forth, but I think he taunted him with a DX suck it.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Pretty sure he did. Got to go back and look. And then RVD countered. Taker grabbed him for a chokeslam, threw him off the stage, gets the pinfall win. Undertaker is your WWF Hardcore Champion. How far? Jim Ross says, how far will these hardcore matches go? I wrote, this match was awesome. The only thing that made it better was that at no point did I fear for either performer, not a drop of blood on either. When the match was over, Taker took the title he left with. This was his only hardcore title win and reign, But I think you and I are in the same boat here where it's like, this is how you can do a dangerous looking, hardcore match where both guys go in the back, couple bumps and bruises, but you're all going home to your wives and your families or friends, depending on your lifestyle.
Amen.
No blood.
Exactly.
No cutting yourself up. No hard way. Just, I thought it was great. We go backstage. Chris Jericho's in Ric Flair's locker room. Jericho tells Rick that he doesn't think he can pull it off. Jericho tells Rick that you don't think I can pull it off. Rick says, no, I think you can. I think more power to you if you can. Again, Rick is just playing down here. These guys come in. They're big and over the top. Rick is playing down. Rick is hilarious, just agreeing with Chris. Like, yeah, sure. Yeah, believe you. Go do it. Yeah. Go win the match. And then Rick is like, you know what you did? You made me feel excited. I'm going to walk down the aisle on Raw tomorrow night. I'm going to crown whoever it is the undisputed champion. And tells Jericho once again, you know what? More power to you.
More power to you. He who laughs last laughs loudest, and more power to you.
Yeah. Oh, man. Rick is a good boss, right? Anyway, this brought me to the match that I was so upset about, Christy, during the show. Not the segment that most upset me, but the match that most upset me. This is match number 6, WWF Women's Champion Trish Stratus versus Jacqueline. And it starts immediately with Jerry Lawler. Trish is delicious. Well, after that, by the way, I had to mention that they noted that Vengeance is being presented by Lugs, Boots, and Shoes, which was like a nice nostalgic throwback for me before Jerry Lawler said they can handle anything. I'd like to handle Trish. Oh my God. Here's the thing.
I didn't catch that because I was too busy Googling if lugs are still a thing. They are, by the way. But ew.
Yeah. Both women are so I just wrote, both women are working hard to put together a good opening sequence. Jacqueline and Trish, these women can both wrestle. And as they are doing chain wrestling, the same stuff you would see in any good men's single or tag match, the crowd is just chanting, "We want puppies." And Jerry Lawler says, "These are my kind of people." And you're right, Christy. Like, Jerry and Vince are giving millions of young men across the United States of America permission to accept this is the way to treat women. And that's a really, I mean, all kidding aside, that's not a real great thing to like sit there and think about as you reflect on the legacy of the Attitude Era, right?
Right. And again, I just have to wonder what is going through a performer's mind when they're out there giving it their all, putting their safety on the line. These two trained hard together. Like Jacqueline really was there at this time to train Trish, and what they wanted, they got together and they wanted to give this great match that really make both of them look strong. And the crowd is shouting at you to show them your boobs.
It's like it's like if you watch Friends and you're like, you know what would make this show better? Jennifer Aniston took her top off. I just don't remember a whole lot of people widely being praised for that kind of attitude in the 90s.
I mean, they went braless a lot on that show.
Okay, that's fair, but I mean, it's a little different, right? I mean, it's not like your core fan base is clamoring for like the kind of stuff that you're getting here, like unabated in WWE, right?
Right.
So Jacqueline is just blasting. And so here's the thing, and I've talked to many women from this period. I think I talked to Lisa Marie Verone most recently about this. And she was like, when that stuff would happen, we would just try to figure out hard ways to do hard cutoffs to stop that kind of stuff. And Jacqueline did such a good job here that the crowd is chanting, "We want puppies." She just is like, "I'm going to beat the piss out of you, Trish." She just starts punching her, slapping her real hard. I mean, the crowd at that point stops because it's real, because the women are doing a good job. Trish is hitting this beautiful, nice short arm clothesline. And Jacqueline comes back with this brutal looking leg sweep spot that I thought was great. And in response to that, Jerry Lawler says, "Is Trish wearing a black bra?" Jacqueline hits another stiff elbow and Trish fires back with a nice chop, to which Lawler says, "Black bra, JR. Let the puppies out to play." Jim Ross, to his credit, responded by saying, "This isn't a beauty pageant. They're both hammering each other." And, Jim gets a lot of criticism, right? He's done a lot of things. He's an active member of the commentary team. He's not always said the greatest things on social media as far as I think women's relations go, but credit where credit it's due. This thing was spiraling out of control with misogyny, and Jim Ross seemed to be the only person in this situation attempting to give this match any kind of gravitas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a line, I think, even to the people who will shout, "Show me your puppies," there's a line, right? And when two performers are out there really giving it their all, like that's the line. The behind the scenes stuff, and with Stacy Keibler when she's on the apron and getting pulled into the match to get her ass slapped, like that's on a little bit lower down on the spectrum. But like this right here, like this was the time for Jim to step in and really cut it off.
So
enough.
Yeah, so Trish surprised Jacqueline with a backslide pin for the win, both women. And here's the thing, after the match, I was like, I'm in bizarro world right here. These women walked in the middle of the ring. They shook hands like it was a Ring of Honor match. Good sportsmanship. I wrote, this was not a perfect match, but holy hell was it upsetting listening to commentary while the women were actually given a chance to wrestle here. And it was just undercut at every moment by Jerry Lawler. And it points the fans, but I got to give most of this heat to Lawler, who just was an obnoxious piece of shit, I thought, during this match, to be quite blunt. So
yeah, well, no, and like what you said about the way the match ended, it was almost like Trish and Jacqueline needed to acknowledge to themselves and publicly in front of everyone that like, hey, that was a great match. Good work.
Yes, I wanted to hug them and be like, you did a good job. I am sorry. This is the Fight Club that you're in. We need a classier Fight Club, right? Oh my God. All right. This brings us to match number 7, Kurt Angle versus WWF champion Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is the first of 3 matches that will close the show here. There's a couple vignettes before we get to even the action. So the first one is a recap of Rock teasing Vince kissing his, and then Jim Ross's, and then Trish's, and then eventually Rikishi's ass from SmackDown. And Jim Ross, when it came time for Rock to be like, hey, put the cowboy hat on Vince, and I hope you got barbecue on your butt, Jim looked like he may have been enjoying that just a little bit too much. I don't know.
I noticed that too. I was trying to remember like what had gone on or what was going on exactly with Jim and Vince, both on screen and behind the scenes at this time, because I saw that too.
And at some point when they had Vince going into Rikishi's ass, I don't know if Rock did it or it was a sound effect they inserted afterwards, but there was a loud fart noise that just seemed unnecessary.
That had to be The Rock, right?
Then The Rock says the Kiss My Ass Club is closed, which created some consternation and confusion for me. Because then we go to New York where Rikishi is talking about how he had to have Vince's head surgically removed from his ass. Good line. But then in one foul swoop, he says, now that the Kiss My Ass Club is closed, I'm ready to back it up again. Which made me just like, right, what? Like, what does that even mean?
He's opening his own club?
What does that even mean? All right.
It was cool. Was that the restaurant? Was that the WWE restaurant in Times Square?
Yeah, WWE New York. You never go?
Nope, never made it there. But it was sure cool to see it. And I just thought about like how awesome it would have been to be a fan and be able to watch a pay-per-view at the WWE restaurant with Rikishi there, like doing stand-ins,
I visited WWE New York when I went to go visit New York when I was like, 16, or whatever, 15, 16, 17, something like that. Like I was telling the bar, it was really just like a gift shop with like it wasn't even like a big dining room in the back. I wish I'd have been there for a pay-per-view. That sounds like it would have been fun. I was just there during the day just to check it out. It really wasn't anything to write home about. I'm not shocked at it.
Was it disappointing like the Hard Rock Cafe?
Hard Rock Cafe actually was better than WWE.
Oh, sad.
Yeah, because WWE New York, like, I don't know why, but I like thought there would at least be somebody there, like, that I could like talk to or get a photo with, or maybe a bunch of memorabilia. There was like 1 or 2 pieces, like some boots. I remember Andre's hands were there. And then we sat down and my parents were like, this is a $40 hamburger. We're not eating here. And we left.
What a great story.
So anyway, then we go to our second pre-match video. Vince is shown saying Kurt Angle needed to be the Universal Champion. It shows Vince and Rick agreeing to have 2 matches at Vengeance, one for the WCW, one for the WWE Championship, then 1 match at the end of the night to declare a undisputed champion, and then some 90s rock song. I have no idea what this song was, but it was like 3 minutes of just a montage of all 4 of these guys just fighting. So, tone of the moment. Fink comes out. He announces the first of 3 matches for the Undisputed Championship. Austin, and again, I just watched 17 8 months earlier. He turned heel. He aligned with Vince McMahon. He is now somehow wildly popular again and is now sporting the Wolfpack colors. And everybody is chanting what, which I wrote down, I hope to God does not go for the rest of the show, because this thing had to have just been catching fire. The whole what chance. Oh, my God. The two men touch for a few seconds, separate, repeats several times. Austin spits in Angle's face. The two men are just brawling around. I didn't remember this match. I didn't think that Austin was even going to take German suplexes because of his neck or whatever. But it's so much brawling. They're brawling around the outside. Austin's going after Angle's right side. They get back in the ring. Austin hits an arm breaker. He's dropping chops. Jim Ross is noting how Angle hasn't been able to hit these suplexes, and Angle gets Austin in the ankle lock, pulls him from the bottom rope. Angle finally gets there. He's able to break the hold. Austin backdrops Angle over the top rope to the floor and is now bouncing Angle's head off the announce table. Throws some more chops. Angle has Austin's leg now wrapped around the ring post. He's going after the legs. Pauses to deliver his own stiff as hell chops. Angle puts the figure four on Austin around the ring post until the ref counts him off. Great spot.
That was so cool. I was like, why don't we see that more? There are so few moves that you could do that with, and it was so cool.
It's true.
I guess because it's crazy dangerous.
It's very dangerous to do that. I taught Liz one night, my girlfriend, how to do the figure four, and because we were like having some.
Well, that just sounds like a fun date night, Nick.
We have a couple cocktails. I've taught Liz a couple things. Her dad's like a legit Olympic wrestler and could kick my ass.
Wow.
But I know a couple things, and she put it on, and as soon as she did, I knew I had made a mistake, because she tightened like you would do, like she tightened up, and like you feel that on your ankle and your shin bone, and you're like, holy hell. I'm like, you're gonna break my goddamn. I was like, take this off.
Wow, Liz laying the smack down.
It's not that hard to do. Like, it is your bone is right over like the other, and like if you put pressure on both sides of that thing, I mean, you're gonna snap somebody's bone, and then you put the leverage on it. That is a genuinely dangerous move. So anyway, Angle brings Austin back to the ring for the ankle lock. The two brawl around some more. Angle finally hits some German suplexes 3 in a row. I was surprised. Jim Ross now starts talking about Angle's surgically repaired neck. I thought that's why Jim hadn't been talking about it till now, because we weren't going to see these suplexes, but we did. Austin then went to the top rope, or Angle went to the top rope. He hit this he went for a beautiful moonsault. I forget sometimes how great Kurt Angle's moonsaults are, but Austin rolled away. He ate it. Austin did the Luthez press. He hit his own 3 German suplexes in a row. Angle turned it around for an Angle slam, near fall, but Austin spun him around, hit the stunner, pinfall, retained the WWF Championship. I thought it was a very good match, but I don't think it ever got to great, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. And also, I think kind of on the same wavelength, I was almost distracted throughout the match by like, what is Steve going to do? What is he going to take? What is he,
Right.
What is he well enough to do? Kind of same as you were saying. And I don't know if you had caught in that do not try this at home vignette that they showed, a little bit before this. There was a quick shot of Steve on the gurney in the ring, like buckled down, that looked bad. And so it felt like we had just been reminded of what he had gone through. I think it had been about a year at this point, right?
Yeah. No, yeah. It had,
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, are they going to do that? But I guess it almost lent more like to the moves that they really did do when he did the suplexes and stuff, because we were wondering, can Steve really take all that?
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. But anyway, Austin, he retained. He's going to be going on to the finals to take on the winner of Rock and Jericho. But before we get to that, comes the most problematic segment of the entire show for me. So Trish is in her locker room, like in a towel, and Tess just comes in, and there's nobody else there. And she's in this towel and says he wants to give her a congratulatory kiss. And she is just terrified, but kind of laughing at him. And Tess says Trish is probably wondering how she gets to kiss a big, good looking guy like him. And he tells her to pucker up, baby. This is your lucky night. And then when she says no, he like freaks out like the worst rapey frat boy I've ever seen in my entire life. He asks Trish if she's one of those kinds of girls who's going to rat him out to management for acting like a creep and try to get him fired. You can't get me fired, he screams. I just said this is so uncomfortable, especially considering all of the allegations that have come out, for them to kind of like make light of it. You know, it wasn't like funny, but it wasn't, it was just like creepy, like gross. I hated this, Christy. It was the worst thing on the whole show for me.
Yes, it's absolutely deplorable. If we think back, though, it hasn't been different for that long. You know, the Me Too movement and all that is just a few years old. And I don't think this is that different from some things that we still would have seen even 4 or 5 years ago on TV. You know, this seems so jarring now and it seems so shocking now. It really wasn't then. But you're so right. It is awful. And it went so much further than it needed to, even for this time, even for what they were trying to get across, that he immediately flips out and all that you're gonna tell me stuff. Like whatever they were trying to do with this could have been done in a much less yucky way. It still would have been gross and terrifying, but they really just went way too far with it.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting to me, Christy, is like I feel like men, like the men in this situation here, right? Like this is what they're. I don't think that women's uncomfortability in these situations has changed in 20 years. You know, I think that the men, right? It's like this was like acceptable for like dudes, but I think women at this time were probably still watching this thing, and this is probably why there weren't as many women watching then. Probably were like watching this thing like this guy is a creep. What are we watching right now? Like it's men that needed the re-education following 2001, right?
True, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
No, absolutely. And again, I mean, I wish, yeah, it's horrifying, but it wasn't horrifying then. It wasn't horrifying then. And I guess I have a lower threshold on some of this stuff just because I have worked in the industry for a long time and I understand how things go, and she's a performer and he's a performer, and I wish that we would have seen how gross all this was back then, because I think Trish could have done something really great in a backstage segment, and this could have been something that told part of a story or that served some kind of a purpose. And it just didn't.
But it's like at the same time, it's like I think the quiet part was said out loud, unfortunately, which is like, you're not going to be one of those girls who tells management that I'm a creep, are you? Which is like so obviously something that was said regularly, I feel, like, backstage. And it's like, if this is your culture, why even like bring it to light, right? It just seems,
because that's how accepted it was. That's what I'm saying. Like that, the fact that that everybody let this fly, that this got written, that this got approved, that this got rehearsed, that this got performed live on TV, just shows how much it wasn't a big deal, how much people acted like they didn't have a problem with it, how much no one cared if a woman had a problem with it, and how much a woman herself had to just think like, oh, well, it's not an issue. This is how men are supposed to talk. And yeah, I'm not supposed to go tell management. Like that was internalized. We know so much better now.
Well,
we just really didn't then.
I was about to say, do we, Christy? Because it's like, I feel front of house, sure, right? Like on the surface, like the business has become more progressive, but like, I don't really.
They at least wouldn't put it on TV now. Like you're saying, the fact that they were honest about it and the culture. Yeah, they wouldn't put it on TV now. Has it actually changed behind the scenes? Absolutely not. 1,000,000%. Not at all. Not a tweet. Not a teensy bit.
I think because of the longevity of the company, I think it may have changed a bit more in WWE. I don't want to cast any shadows specifically over anybody here, but broadly, I will say this is still a problem. This is not.
Yes, and it is much more still a problem in the world of pro wrestling than it is in other areas of entertainment.
And at the same time, like the level of fear has gone up too, because like of how much it's like before we thought we could talk about it, it was cool. Now that you can't talk about it, but we want things to stay the same. If you talk openly about it, the level of fear in the business has gone way up, I feel like, in regards to these kinds of issues.
Right. And let's not forget that what ends up happening to the perpetrators, even now in 2020, is that they get a huge payoff. They get their contract paid out and they get $50 million to go sit at home and be retired for the rest of their lives. So, we as a society don't have this figured out yet. It's no wonder that 20 years ago it was this much of a mess, because it's still a mess.
Anyway, what a fun conversation. Anyway.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Hey, Christmas. That's right. This is the Christmas episode. All right. This brings us to match number 8. WCW World Champion The Rock versus Chris Jericho. After some nice back and forth to start, Rock gets the outside. He's trying to get back in. Jericho hits a springboard drop kick to the outside. It was a pretty slow start, so I just kind of jumped to when the action really kind of kicked in. Jericho and Rock go back and forth, bashing each other in the Spanish announce table. Back in the ring, the two are going back and forth. The crowd is kind of quiet here. I don't really know why that is, but as Jericho's throwing Rock into a sleeper hold, they start to chant Rocky here, I think mostly out of like boredom and trying to entertain themselves. But this is a really slow start to this bout, Christy.
Yeah, and is it that they hyped up Steve Austin and The Rock so much that everyone just thought that this match was like too much, to the point where everyone just thought, well, this match is a technicality. Of course, The Rock is going to win and we don't need to be here for this. And we're going to save our Rocky chance for the undisputed championship match.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And I think that Chris was purposefully kind of working a slower style here, knowing exactly how long he was going to have to be in the ring. So Rock broke the hold finally. Jericho hits a lion salt. Now Jericho's arguing with Earl Hebner. He hits Rock with a suplex. Then he goes up top, and Rock hits the ropes to knock Jericho's feet out from under him. Rock then now is delivering chops on Jericho, who's perched on the top turnbuckle. Jericho knocked Rock down, started giving him chops of his own. Rock is throwing Jericho into the corner where he goes over the top turnbuckle, eats the ring post. Oh, yeah, there was this spot where Rock went to chuck Chris in the corner, and Chris, jumps over the top turnbuckle, and, this is the post. I thought he was trying to bust himself open the way he headed that post, and then falls all the way to the outside. Oh, my God, that looked brutal.
Oh, I didn't realize that he was maybe trying to bust himself open.
I thought he tried and failed and just hurt himself. Then anyway, Jericho's on the outside. He clears the announce table. He took Rock on top of the table. He teased the Rock bottom, only for Rock to reverse it into a DDT, and the table just exploded. Both these guys were down. And the ref, now here's where I thought this was really interesting. Jim Ross perfectly explained that the referee was not going to be doing a double count out, because one of these guys had to advance to the finals to crown an undisputed champion, but one of them could still be counted out individually, or you could still lose by DQ. It was a little thing, but I was so happy he mentioned that.
Because it would have been confusing otherwise.
Yeah, it made sense. So anyway, both men back in the ring. Finally, Jericho hits this full Nelson facebuster. Look great. Jericho casually swanton. I just wrote casually swantons Rock. Just kind of walks over to drop.
As one does every once in a while on a Tuesday.
Like he was relaxing into a shed. Jericho stood over Rock's body, teased the people's elbow, complete with the arm pad removal, only for Rock to grab him. Lock in the sharpshooter, but Jericho rolled into his own sharpshooter. Rock agonized for a couple minutes before getting to the ropes, quickly getting a roll up on Jericho for a near fall. Rock turned that around fast into a rock bottom, but he's too beat up to do the pin. And in that moment, Vince McMahon, he runs the ring. That's what this show needs, more Vince. Vince argued with the ref. Rock rolls onto Jericho for the pin. No ref there. Rock walks over to Vince. He knocks him off the apron. He turns around. Hits Jericho with a spine buster, goes to the people elbow, but Vince pops up on that apron again. Rock pulls him into the ring, and he lays out Vince. The ref's tended to Vince. Jericho hits a low blow. He hits the rock bottom. Ref turns around. 1, 2, 3. Jericho, the new and final WCW champion. And before you can even celebrate, the glass shatters. Steve Austin's coming to the ring for the next match. Goes right at Jericho. The bell has not rung yet. Do you want to take a pause? Yeah, you want to jump in?
Technically, I went down the rabbit hole of thinking with this too. Technically, was Jericho, did he become a WCW champion at that point? Because that match wasn't for the WCW championship. That match was for an opportunity at the undisputed championship. So did he really ever become, that WCW championship was just a world title at that point. It had turned into.
They didn't call it the WCW championship? Okay. So this was the one that they gave Hunter, right? They just gave it to him and then became the World Heavyweight Championship. I think Rick gave it to him, right? Or something?
Yeah, I think so. So technically, Jericho never really had it, right?
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I stand corrected. So I guess that would make Booker T the last WCW champion, right?
Yes. Booker T, you say?
Yes, I know. So anyway, Austin comes in the ring. He levels Jericho with a chair shot. I'm sorry. I got my A's wrong here. Kurt Angle comes to the ring. He levels Steve Austin with a chair shot. Angle then takes his chair and he goes home. Rock then gets in the ring. He drops Jericho with a rock bottom, and then he chases Kurt Angle away from the ring. Earl Hebner then calls for the bell, starts the match, and begins a 10 count while both men are down. This was weird to me just because Jim Ross had just explained how you couldn't have a double finish because we needed a definitive winner here. Was the point that he had to do the 10 count because if one of them got to their feet, then that would have been the undisputed champion. But if he got all the way to 10, would he have just started over? I don't really know.
Well, maybe JR didn't do as good a job of explaining it as we think he did then.
I'm going to ask Earl Hebner about this. I'm going to find him.
Did this trigger the song by the Dixie Chicks, Goodbye Earl, for anyone else?
It did not.
Because that's what happened in my house after Earl got knocked out. And they were like, remember that song, Goodbye Earl? But nobody did. It's very deep. YouTube it.
So then we go back to the ring here. Sorry. Then Jim Ross says the ref needs to revive these guys, not start the match, which is true because they're both like unconscious. How do you call for the bell when these guys are not even on their feet? Jericho rolled onto Austin near fall. Jericho's kicking Austin in the corner. Mike Chioda tells him to stop, and Jericho just loudly yells F off, but he doesn't say F off. He says the whole thing. Austin gets Jericho in the middle of the ring. He attempts a stunner, but kicks Jericho to the outside where they start to brawl. Pulls up the padding on the outside of the ring. Turns around into a punch for Jericho. Looks like Austin popped the back of his head when he fell onto the concrete. Did you notice that too?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, ow. Hi, ow.
Jericho.
What?
Yeah. Jericho took Austin to the top of the Spanish announce table, attempted the walls of Jericho. Austin kind of threw him off, suplexed him onto the concrete. The two are back in the ring. They're brawling around. Austin hit a catapult on Jericho into the corner. Jericho had an armbar on Austin, and with the ref not seeing it, put both his legs up on the ropes for leverage, and it made this armbar look way, way, way more painful, the way that he kind of lazily put his legs up there, Christy. Mm-hmm. Austin then got up. Two men brawl some more until Jericho locks in the walls. Austin gets out. Jericho dives at him, takes out the ref instead. Jericho hits a low blow, then a stunner. Vince McMahon is back. Now he's got Nick Patrick with him. Ric Flair comes out to stop Patrick. Vince lays him out with a sucker punch, throws him into a ring post. Rick really just got his ass kicked by Vince McMahon. I was shocked. Back in the ring, Austin hit a low blow, goes outside to attack Vince. Back in the ring, Austin goes after Jericho. The Luthez press. Jericho goes to the second rope drop kick. Austin grabs him, puts him in the walls. Jericho's tapping. There's no ref. Here comes the last WCW champion, Booker T, out of nowhere. He levels Austin with the WCW title. Jerry Lawler notes he doesn't even work here. Jim Ross. This, if they'd have done this 8 months earlier as a way to actually start the WCW, WWE stuff, I think it would have probably lasted. Jericho rolls onto Austin. He becomes the undisputed champion. Vince McMahon walks up the ramp, laughing loudly and laughing last. And Jericho celebrates as confetti falls from the ceiling. And I heard rockets going off, but I did not see them. Any thoughts here about the end of the show before I have one addendum note that I want to bring up? But yes, anything else here?
Yeah, I cover a lot of old pay-per-views in covering 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff doing his after show. And it seems like there's so many pay-per-views from this period and before it that have all these crazy run-ins in the main event that affect the finish. And it's like they're trying to tell 6 stories in one and it's just too many guys and it's too much stuff going on. There was a lot going on, but it worked, right? It was easy to follow. I loved every little bit of it. Who doesn't want to see Rick and Vince going at it a little bit, even if Rick gets punched in the face, even if it ends up with Vince McMahon being the last to laugh. Like, I enjoyed this. And I think that's hard to do, especially in this time period. It was very easy that this could have been too much, but it was well done.
I'm kind of iffy on it. I'm not like thumbs up, thumbs down. For me, historically, I just think that this show signals a dramatic turn to what we see right now with the product.
Oh.
Like, this show is Vince is done. I am now back in charge. We are going to do things my way. And we know where the years to go after this where we're headed. And they weren't particularly strong years for the company. And that's why I bring up this addendum note here, because I went back to the Observer just to see what was some other news of the time. One thing that stood out to me like a sore thumb, Rob Feinstein, who we are not big fans of. But he has RF Video, and he has announced he's starting his own promotion called Ring of Honor. And the first show was going to take place February 23rd, 2 months after this show. It's going to be headlined by Super Crazy and Eddie Guerrero, and it notes that Christopher Daniels works the undercard. So even then, Daniels was worthy of putting in the press release. I think that people knew that another company had to come along. I think that people knew that Vince was getting too much control. I think that this was not a bad pay-per-view, but I think it was a sign of the times. And I'm not shocked that I read that Ring of Honor just happened to be popping up at the same time this show went on, because I think there was a need for somebody else to come into the room at this point.
Yeah, and how does this play into the fact that WWE had to really be feeling themselves? Like, they essentially at this point had won the war to the point where they bought the other company and dissolved it. Like, I think there's some confidence comes with that.
But that's
right. And where they would not have been threatened by hearing that, oh, there's this new little thing called Ring of Honor coming around the corner. Man, whatever. We'll squash them too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this review, Christy. Thank you for this Christmas special. This was a really fun walk down memory lane. I think you're right. Undertaker Rob Van Dam was, I think, my favorite match of the show too. And it was a hardcore championship match. Like, how many pay-per-views are you going to be like, yeah, the hardcore championship match, I think, was the best match on the show. Well, we'll be back on Monday for regular shows. We have one last review. We're going to do it next Friday. That'll be me and Raj talking the Rumble 92 on New Year's Day. But next week, you're going to get 4 brand new shows. The first guest we're going to have to kick off the last week of the year is going to be our good friend Fred Rosser. Fred, the former Darren Young. If you're a theater nerd or whatever, go to Broadway On Demand. It's free right now to go check out this show, Theality TV, the making of an off-Broadway musical. It is a story it's a real thing. It's if you liked Waiting for Guffman, but you're like, man, I wish this was real, this is your show. Great characters. It's all about these people on a $10,000 budget trying to put together this first-run off-Broadway musical called Little House on the Ferry. I guess it's got a lot of LGBTQ themes in it. I watched the first episode. I thought it was great. I'm going to go watch all 10. But Fred will be here talking about that. And, of course, he recently mentioned that he had been turned down by AEW twice. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And that's a video interview. You can go find that on all our social media channels, just like you can find this at Wrestling Inc. on Twitter, Wrestling Inc. Facebook, and Instagram. And, of course, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, weekends after pay-per-views, we go live with the Wrestling Inc. podcast for your late-night news discussion, post-show punditry. We pull that audio, we put it over on the RSS feed for the Wrestling Inc. podcast. It's different than the daily. Subscribe to both to get your maximum Wrestling Inc. audio experience. All right, Christy, what do you want to plug, promote, put over here to wrap up the show today?
Oh, I want to wish everyone a very, very merry, happy holidays. I hope that you all are enjoying whatever you get to do at this time and looking forward to a brand new year next year. Please hit me up at Christy Reports. Let me know how you're doing. I'm not going to be able to go home and see my family this holiday. So, let's all connect and hang out and celebrate together. Give me a present, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Christy Reports. I appreciate it. So thank you all so much. This was tons of fun. Go back and watch Vengeance 01, guys. It's a good one.
Do it, guys. Go watch it. I hope we got you on the hook. I hope you learned some things. I hope you enjoyed my dumb jokes. I'm at House Rebel, HAUS Rebel over on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to you next week. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.